welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your host, Michelle Albers, and today I have Stacy Rocklein with me, a new author I heard, and a relationship coach. Is that how you?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. And I asked you very quickly if you would be willing to set an intention, and you jumped right on it and said yes. So, shall we start there?
Yeah. I love how you start your show. Yeah. I would like to set an intention for myself to be as my highest self and as authentic as I can be, so I can be vulnerable in this conversation, so that we make a real authentic connection, and that translates to your audience in a way that has a meaningful impact on the listeners.
I love that. So I want to jump right in and ask, how long have you been? Well, I think I'm going to start with the relationship coach because you said new author. So
Yeah.
let's start with the relationship coach first.
Okay, yeah. This is my third career, actually. So I was a math teacher, then a stay-at-home mom, and then I came back and got into coaching. And at first, I was leadership. That was sort of where my strengths were. But quickly, I ended up in a healing journey that led me into a more heart-centered space. And basically, I started as a life coach. And as soon as you start talking to people, I mean, we're really only working on relationships with ourselves, with other people in different settings, but it all really comes back to that.
I love that. I got the goosebumps when you said you started as a math teacher and then you were a mom and then you were a mom, like you're not still one.
Right,
But
right.
I love because so many people that I meet when I have these conversations, what I find we land is like something happens in our life that sort of shows us or reveals. And then if we're listening and if the timing is if all those things parts come together and the timing is right and the alchemy is there for us to say yes, and we do, I find it just really fascinating at how like our journey will unfold in a way that maybe like we never would have thought of it, even 5 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So I just love that. That was going to be my question is like, where did the relationship, but you were doing quote unquote regular coaching, right? Like
Yeah.
not themed, not really, well, leadership, I guess is what you said. And then that translated or transmuted or transferred into relationships, which is a beautiful thing because you're right. Even if you're sitting in a room alone, there is a relationship in that room.
For sure. The most important one, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Okay. I want to dive in and ask a bunch of questions about that. But first I'm curious about the book. I want to hear about the
Okay,
book.
yeah. This is, I'll show it to you even though we're audio. It's Forgive Without an Apology: How to Heal,
Mm.
Set Boundaries, and Create Deeper Connections. And that, well, let's tell this story. This is the part that's not in the book, but I actually think that your listeners would get a kick out of. I was kind of having a not a failure. My business wasn't moving along as fast as I thought it should be when I first started it. And so I was feeling a little bruised by that. And I had a healer come to me and ask me if I wanted to do a session. And I'm like your textbook helper with healing. I'll give you a formula, but like not, I'm not in that kind of art of healing. But I'm always open. So I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'm kind of having a tough time. Um, and she worked on my energy and different parts of my, body. And afterwards, I was like, how did I do? Right. I wanted to get an A. And she said, yeah, everything is great. I was able to clear everything except for your heart. Like
Oh,
you've got
wow.
a significant block in your heart. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she was like, I actually don't feel that I can break it free. Like I can give you the number of like a specialist. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'd never heard that someone like could be so broken that a healer couldn't help them. Anyways, I went home and I was like, what am I going to do about this? I Googled it. I like went to Amazon. I'm like, there's got to be a book. No, there's not. So I just kind of asked the universe, what is it going to take for me to heal my heart? Like, I don't even know where to begin. And sometimes I get sort of universe nudges with a word. And so I got 3 words that day: write, forgive, and cry. And I was like, I don't even know what this means. So I started writing, and all that kept coming up was like stories from my childhood, stories from my past. And I started to write about those. And I'm not kidding when like I had not shed a lot of tears in my life, just very disconnected from my emotions. And I really did start to cry and had the realization that I had a tough exterior. I was, successful and, action oriented and all of those things, but that I didn't feel loved the way I needed to be loved when I was a kid. And like intellectually, I know my parents loved me, but like the feeling of it, I didn't have the feeling of it. And so I chased it with, ambition and achievement and awards and grades and all of that stuff because the approval felt really good. That felt warm. And that the heart blockage really came down to my inability to let it in and also let it out. And so that turned into a whole process of forgiveness. And then I created a digital course and taught that to hundreds of people and then turned it into a book so it could have a wider audience.
That's so amazing. Because I think the word forgiveness it's kind of like the word surrender. People just go, ugh, what are you talking about? How
Totally.
do I even do that? Ugh. So I love the title, Forgive. Was it forgiveness or forgive without an apology?
Yeah, forgive without an apology.
Yeah, that implies so much as someone who's like a seeker and doing the work and on the path. It's like forgive without an apology. It implies boundaries, it implies mindfulness, it implies like an internal, I guess, okayness, because I think when I wasn't okay, and this is coming from my personal story, right? But when I wasn't okay, I apologized for everything because I was afraid if I didn't apologize that I wouldn't be seen or loved or liked or, received in any kind of way. So that's so amazing. And so this book actually stemmed from a class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so do you find that people like who take the class also want the book for more support, but is it also a good standalone? Like you don't have to take the class, the book will walk you through and you can kind of figure out what support you need along the way, but it doesn't have to be that class. I'm not poo-pooing the class. I'm just saying like sometimes people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I haven't taught it in a few years actually. So this is a replacement for it. And I'm a big self-healer. Like I want to be able to lock myself in a room and go
Yeah.
at my pace and like do my thing. And I love building communities. So I like being a part of communities, but I I seek out resources that are things I can do on my own. And so this book is definitely for the self-healer. And you're right, it is. I mean, I think forgiveness just comes down to it is a personal experience. It really doesn't depend on the other person at all. But that's where
Yeah.
people get really stuck. I would have a lot of people come into my course who were dealing with betrayals, were dealing with abuse. And a lot of times it wasn't, the other person wasn't going to apologize, couldn't be in their life because it was dangerous. There was all kinds of things that you have to build that bridge from where you are to be able to start the forgiveness process. And you have to let go of that need for an apology in that process.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful explanation of forgiveness and the apology. It is, I mean, forgiveness really is about you, even though forgiveness includes other people, right? Like, but the other thing I love about, how, like, well, I don't know, maybe not everyone relates to this, but like if you're doing writing or if you're in a business, if you own a business, everyone's like niche down, find your pocket. And what I love about this book is like, if you're not ready to forgive, you're not going to be called to this book at all. But I feel like everybody on their journey at some point gets to a place where they realize they're stuck and they can't figure it out. And inevitably, the word forgiveness could very potentially be part of that. And then it's
Yeah.
like you hear it so many times, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, maybe this forgiveness thing is something I ought to lean into. And I think I'm going to do that. So I don't know. It's like a bravo on the title of the book to
It's
really,
a
I mean,
charge.
it zeroes in.
Yeah. It's a charged word for sure. I mean, the very first thing I do in the book, and I always did in my class, is define what it is and what it is not, because I mean, I was raised Catholic, so it's got all kinds of baggage attached to it. And, you know, we all have things we attach to the word forgiveness that I think are disempowering when it should be an act that feels empowering to be able to let go. And when I got that word forgive, I in my mind I was like, I don't understand. Like, I'm not upset about anything. I'm not stuck to anything. I'm not mad at my parents. But what I was doing was like, it's not spiritual bypass, but definitely has like bypassy vibes, right? I was just like, oh, that's my past. I'm not going to think about it. I'm positive. I'm going to move forward, take my steps, be successful. I'm not going to let my past bring me down. But I didn't realize that inside those experiences, there's so much information about your limiting beliefs and so much information about your defense mechanisms and where they come from. And so it wasn't forgiveness in a way that I needed to let go of feelings I had about anyone. It was forgiveness as a process and a practice and a discipline for helping me uncover information about myself that was limiting me in all of my relationships. And really, the stuff that got me committed to it was I thought about how I knew my parents loved me, but I didn't have the feeling of being loved. And I was like, oh my God, I have three sons. Like, what is their experience like? You know, that's a big motivator to want to break those generational patterns. And I think that sometimes that's even more than for yourself. You want to do it for the people that you love.
Oh my gosh. I find that to be so, it's almost like you need the people that you love to be the catalyst to get you to start moving. And then once you start moving, you're like, oh, hey, wait, I'm included in this too, whether I like it
Yeah,
or not. I got to
totally.
participate. What does that mean?
Totally.
Oh my gosh. Okay, will probably circle back to the book because my brain will likely go down a whole tunnel of everything you just said, and I find it really amazing and fast. I love how candid you are about just the journey of like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like I'm good. I'm a doer. I do my stuff, and life is great. But then what I heard in your story, like through my lens, is there's a lot of inner child stuff in there. It's like, well, yeah, you today might be great, but like your inner child children have a lot to teach you and they just want you to sort of like look at it at least, like that's kind of what I heard, but we don't have to go down that rabbit hole right now. We can I want to hear more about like, so how do you work with people with, is it with relationships? So let me finish my sentence before I jump ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
is
It
it
kind
is
of
it
depends.
just them, or is it like
Yes,
people
yes, yes.
together?
No, I work one on one and mostly women. I do have male clients, but mostly female clients. And they come in from different angles with relationship. They might come in for a parenting relationship or relationship with a parent or romantic or, you know, usually in those three veins. But no matter where we start, it's sort of like any kind of coaching, you know, whatever process. Where are we? Where do you want to go? What do you have control over? You know, what kind of responsibility can you take? We can't get the other person to change, but we can bring in new tools and new behaviors and new intentions into our relationships and then see where they go from there. But it's all about, you're usually toggling one of two switches. Either conflict is the problem that they want to address first, or intimacy is the lack of intimacy is what they want to address. And they're really related, honestly. I mean, I think conflict is the best path to intimacy we have. That's where we have the conversations about, you know, where to be careful around my heart and what I truly want. And like, I think that that's such an opportunity, but a lot of times people will shy away from it or not get better at it. And so those are usually the two things we're working on and where they want to go. And sometimes it's where to build in relationships because not every relationship is fertile ground for emotional intimacy, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and I think a question that came in when you were speaking about that is like, I wonder how many people that come in, they land there, they want to start working with you. How many actually know what they want? Like, do you have to almost start there? Like, do you even know what it is that you do want? You just know
Yeah.
it's not right now, but you don't really know why or what it is that might work to make you happy. Like, you actually don't know what you want.
Yeah. And women, we classically aren't great at deciding what our needs are. Most people, when they come to me, there's a big thing, right? There's a fire they're trying to put out, or there's a relationship they're trying to mend. So we usually have an obvious thing in front of us, but yeah, you figure out pretty quickly that you need to know what you want. You need to
Yeah.
know, like, if this is a someone who comes in because of betrayal, like that's overwhelming everything. That's the rug has been pulled out from underneath them. We are talking about identity, like life, not just relationship. I mean, it's a big thing to repair from. And so that does come down to, are you going to keep building in this relationship? That's a choice that you've got to make. If you are, what needs to happen in that direction? And if you're not, where are you going? Right? There's two totally different pathways depending on what we're doing. So but usually there's something right in front of us that has to be handled. And then as I work with people for longer periods of time, years, yeah, we get down to what are you looking for? What do you want? I just got to marry one of my clients, which was pretty
Oh,
cool this year.
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So often it's the fire first, right? Like you just said, there's like this big thing in front of you and like you kind of gotta look.
Or it could be like a desire, like a deep desire to find a relationship or to, silence and distance in a relationship is also a fire of its own kind.
Sure. Yeah. Do you find that I guess it probably depends. It's maybe an unfair question. I was going to the place of like, do you find that you inevitably do start with like the person themselves over like considering the whole picture? I don't know. It's like, do you look at the whole picture? I mean, you obviously have to look at the whole picture first, but as far as like where you start to take a step, and I think I'm asking this question, it just feels like one of those questions where it's coming in because it's like if someone's listening, I think sometimes there's really big fear of the unknown that prevents us from connecting with someone like you or me or any of the people on this podcast, right? Is because it's like, well, I know that I'm not ready to look at X. And if I think that's where they're going to start, then I'm just not going to bother.
Right, right,
And
right.
so it's not really a direct question, but do you understand kind of the vibe I'm
I think
going? Yeah.
so. I think so. So, a place that is a difficult place to work, but is a very it's an obvious place to work is boundaries. So that's where the first thing I need to do is get the person to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
They need to feel safe in their relationship. They need to feel safe in their life. And sometimes that's emotional safety. And, I really have not had to work with a lot of physical safety, fortunately, because I feel like that would be really hard. But that's the first thing is, do you need to put in boundaries? How do we do that? That in and of itself is a very challenging thing to do, but that's my job, is to be there to support them as they try to put in some boundaries. Sometimes it's endings for a while where you need to take a break from certain people in your life, especially when some of us are dealing with like family, extended family. Um, in the big picture, what our goal is how do you not even become the person you're meant to be, but be the person that you are inside. And
Yeah.
that sometimes is putting in those boundaries to protect yourself in relationships. And sometimes it's forgiveness. And sometimes it's figuring out what you want. And no matter where your relationships go, whether they end, whether they grow, and you know this, we want to always be becoming the version of ourselves we want to be. So it's a lot of personal responsibility. How do I show up? Even if the other person is like terrible in conflict, how do I show up the way I want to show up in conflict? What are the small behaviors that I want to change? As small as like an example I always use is I'm like a hand talker. And at one point, my husband was just like, when you come at me with the fingers, like it's very triggering. And that's a small change, right? I mean, I just had to start putting my hands in my pockets and eventually I stopped that. That's like a little behavior that impacts our ability to communicate. And so, we find ways, the simplest ways to get started that feel doable. You want to take your baby steps and not just like bite off huge things at first.
I love that you just said that. I love that so much because I think sometimes, you know, when you're a person who's knowing you want to make change, but it feels like a completely overwhelming, daunting task of like, where do I even start? And then our humanness likes to start playing the fear button and getting in the way of all the different things that might actually help because there is so much unknown and there is, I don't know, I find often it's like almost like a, well, not even almost, a lack of trust within ourselves because we just haven't looked at ourselves enough to even build a trusting relationship with our own, like with us, like with
Yeah.
just us within ourselves. And then, I mean, that in and of itself can feel like betrayal, right? But we don't label it as that. We don't say, I
Mm.
betrayed myself. Like, we don't use those big words, but I think sometimes on a subconscious level, and I'm not claiming this as I'm not a therapist, but I'm just saying, I think sometimes we get like these running threads that tell us a story that isn't necessarily accurate, but then it makes it really hard to take a step if it feels daunting and overwhelming. So I'm circling all the way back to what I love about what you just said is you really did make it accessible. There is a slow step by step, and it might not feel slow. It might not even end up being slow, but the possibility of it, like it is where you yourself take it. When you decide to sign up and work with someone like you're there to like almost hold the hands and give some clarity and accuracy so that one step at a time it can feel possible. Because I think sometimes when we're so stuck or so defeated feeling, it's really hard to believe that it's even possible. And what I
Yeah.
just heard with what you just said is like, well, we're gonna make it possible, but it is a loose term. It's not
Yeah, yeah,
necessarily,
yeah. Absolutely. Well, like if someone comes in and they're like, we are fighting all the time, like we just there's a constant fight. That is, that just it's overwhelming at home. It bleeds into work, and it's like, okay, we're not going to start with the big problem. What we're going to
right.
do is try a new tool in the very next argument. Like, not like, let's get down to the root of this issue and let's like solve all these problems. Like, no, the next time you're about to have a disagreement, we're going to work on one thing at a time. And that way you get a little win in the next thing. And it's like, I'm all about solving the small problem will solve the bigger problem. You're like biting off on the bigger problem. So you might as well just deal with the next thing that's in front of you. It's just like forgiveness too. If you forgive one thing, it's got its tentacles in other areas. And so you're kind of like you're solving other problems at the same time if you just focus on that like one little thing, because things can feel overwhelming when you come in and it's something like that, and it's coming in with like all this story. It's like, we're terrible together. We shouldn't be together. We're fighting all the time. And it's like, okay, we need to breathe for a second. Fighting doesn't mean bad relationship. It means communication, potential growth. Like, there's stuff to work with. And I actually think that it really settles people's nervous system to say, you don't have a bad relationship. Like,
Yeah.
if this is important to you, let's just work on this. And you can make that decision later. You don't have to make that decision now.
That's such a great perspective, I guess, and narrative for people to relearn how they're thinking about like the accuracy of what's happening right now. Because everything, I don't know, I think when we're in it, when we're really in those places where it's just like everything sucks right now, and I want
Totally.
this to be true, but it's where I'm not even close to it being true. Like those times, I think it's so hard to be in that place of possibility. Like it's hard to be curious when you're just so stuck. And I do think curiosity is a way out,
Yeah,
but I
totally.
don't think you can do that by yourself. And I think so to have someone who can be like, hang on, like, because I also think our tendency when we're stuck in a big thing is to go big. We want to go all the way out to the biggest part of the problem and be like, well, that's the thing I have to do. And it's like, well, hang on.
Yeah,
The ripple effect is real. Like every little action that
totally.
you take that's different than the one you've been taking will ripple out. Like you talked about, it will ripple out and make changes. And but that seems so, I guess, impossible. And I'm just like reflecting on myself and clients and friends, when you're really in that place where you just go, gosh, I have all these big hopes and dreams, but they legitimately feel impossible. And that makes me sad. And then there is this underlying belief of that it is impossible. And I think that's where
Mhm.
someone like you can come in and be like, well, but hang on, how about if the reframe and the new perspective and the just a different way to consider that you could show up
Mhm.
it can have such a big impact. And I think I'm saying that part of it really just like if you're listening and you really are in that stuck place, And you
Totally.
are in the mindset of like, I want it to be true, but I just, for whatever your reason, right? There's a million narratives and reasons and wounds and a lot of different moving parts that could create the narrative that says, but I just don't believe it can happen for me. I think we're too
Hmm.
far gone. I just think like maybe, sure, that's possible, but I don't start any conversation with a client thinking that it's impossible. It's like, well, hang on,
Right.
I think let's not look at that part yet. Like let's start at like what feels like it could be possible right now. What can we
I think
shift for one thing?
I think you're nailing something that's really important that we don't like lead with when we are meeting with clients, but it's our job to some degree to just be hope holders,
Yeah.
right? They need someone who's just going to believe when they don't and has the hope as they just can't kind of bring it up in the moment. And I think that that can be very, well, I know it can be very settling to their nervous system to know that, for the next hour, I'm going to be with someone who believes in me, believes in this relationship right now in this moment and is going to help me take a little step forward so that I'm proud of myself the next time I show up. Like that's part of our job is just like an energetic kind of hope holding.
Yeah. And I think when you were talking about hope too, which I know I just said the word, but my brain didn't go here. I think there's a big difference between hope and need. And I think like, when you're sitting in a room with someone, you might be in the state of hope and they might be in the state of need. And I think your hope can sort of like pull off some of the heaviness of the need and maybe do even some transforming that need into hope versus, because I think need puts so much pressure on us,
Hmm.
and so for you to be able to hear the need and offer hope, but then also
Yeah.
skilled choices, like skilled, mindful, uh, proven even, I don't super love that word, but like proven ways to navigate it in a new different way that takes them somewhere different is so amazing.
Yeah. And the thing is what's nice about it is you feel like you have agency to affect your own self, right? I always say, okay, we don't know what's going to happen in any relationship. We don't know where it's going. There's no guarantee anywhere. And I've been married for a long time. So we don't have to worry about that. We get to just keep being the more equipped and resourced version of ourselves. And if that relationship goes away for some reason someday, we got to bring all of this along with us. We still get to keep these tools. We get to keep this growth. This is what we can impact, and that is an easier hope to hold on to than a hope for the relationship, because
Mm,
yeah, who knows?
that's amazing. So I kind of want to circle back to the book. Unless you have
I'm
more
up
you want
up
to
for
say
whatever.
about. Well, I'm just thinking about forgiveness without apology. First of all, how did the class come to be? Like, where did that start?
Yeah, so after I had been writing every day and I kind of like just took it out. I did that for probably a month. So I had like all of these things that had come up and I realized that I was starting to develop a pattern. I was kind of like doing sort of the same thing. And so I turned that into a just a quick 21-day class just to walk people through that same pattern. And that's yeah, what ultimately because there is a process. I mean, you can, and I love tools. Like I was just
Yeah.
listening to your podcast with Lori and how you guys were talking about, I don't know, she was talking about flow and she was talking about steps to get into the flow. And I just think that steps are helpful, right? When someone just says, just do these things and you're going to watch this unfold. Like I know you have access to it, but a tool can help you kind of access it. Um, but yeah, it's just steps from taking something that like it's fresh and obvious that it hurt you, or it's something that just seems to be coming up that you remember being difficult, that like there's information in there and we can walk that through a process of forgiveness all the way to like who am I because of that? And do I want to take
Mm.
that on or let go of that? Do I want to rewrite this belief about myself? But it starts with letting go of that need for apology, closure. And the way to do that is to learn to give yourself acknowledgement you have to build a bridge for yourself with acknowledgement. And obviously that's a skill that's good in all of our relationships, is to be able to acknowledge and validate. But doing it for yourself is critical, because what you were saying earlier is really important. Having that emotional safety with yourself where you know you're okay, like acknowledgement is a really big tool in that process, because you're saying, first of all, you're saying, this happened and it hurt. And I'm willing to tell the truth about that to myself,
Mm.
right? I was the queen of like, no, it was fine. It's fine. Don't worry about that. But it's like, no, that hurt me. And, this is my truth. Then you can acknowledge that and move forward. So, I mean, the first step is really acknowledgement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And when you were saying that too, I'm thinking about like so many of us. I feel like so many of us are like, no, I'm good. Look at all these good things I'm doing. Look at all this stuff. Look at all this stuff happening. Like on the outside looking in, my life is great. Everything's super. And then I'm just like wondering, is there a universal, like, what is that threshold where you recognize that it's not true and you can't hold that space anymore for yourself? Like the lie just becomes unlistenable. Like you can't
Yeah.
hear it for one more time. And
Yeah.
maybe there's not a universal, right? Everybody has their own place, but I just wonder, what is that like? Because I feel like something must happen where all of a sudden we're just like, oh, this is actually such bullshit. Like this is not true. This isn't working.
Totally. Totally. For me, I know that I got to a point where, like, the underlying feeling that I had when, this healer couldn't heal my heart and I was writing was loneliness. I was like, I am really lonely. And I have a lot of people in my life. And I realized that that was an inability to be vulnerable and to be not okay and share it with people. And once I kind of saw it, just like you were saying, once I saw the loneliness, it just became intolerable to me. I was
Yeah.
like, I can't. And the very first thing I did was I was I was feeling like a huge failure in my business at the time. And I went to a friend and I realized that what I had always done is failed, created like a pivot plan and then executed that. And like I just kind of ran from failure all the time until I succeeded. That was my method. And from the outside, that's not a bad method. It's like, but internally, it feels like desperation as opposed to like being like, oh, I can try something else, but I'm acknowledging my feelings. And so I had come to a friend and I was like, I just want to sit for a minute and talk about like how I'm feeling like a failure, how this is how I'm feeling. And she was like, oh, this is not a failure. I mean, she just kind of like, she
Oh,
did everything that I have trained people up to that point my whole life to do, which is just basically like encourage me to get back up, get going again. And of course she did that because that's like what I had always expected of people. And I realized then, then I was like, she's not going to be able to, she can't sit with me in this feeling. Like, we don't have this kind of relationship. I've never let someone in like that. And she doesn't know what to do. And then I tried with my husband, and he the same way. He was like, oh, it's not a failure. And he just kind of like moved me past the emotional part of it. And I was like, okay, this is the key. This is why I feel lonely. I haven't let people in to see me. And so now I don't feel seen. And this is just I just have to do this differently, right? All of these people are capable of seeing me, but they just don't know that I need that.
whoa. So in that process, this is a you don't have to answer this question. But in that process, I'm just curious, like, did any of them fall off? Like learning how to kind of reframe how they engage with you and like for you to get vulnerable, I imagine there was a learning curve in that, and just like, did any of them just say, whoa, I don't like this new way of engaging. It's too uncomfortable.
That's a great question. I would say it went a few different ways. I mean, I kept trying, and then I kept kind of logging where to build and not build. A lot of those relationships were places that, I mean, I still wanted those relationships, but I'm like, okay, this one isn't going to have emotional intimacy. This is just going
Yeah.
to be like a person I hang out with or whatever. And then there were relationships where it's like, it's like get on board or get out, right? I can't be married to someone who cannot stay with me during an emotional experience, right? So that's just kind of, and this is such a hard thing in marriages, but it is totally doable to ask for something new after decades, right? After decades to come and
Oh,
say,
yeah.
I want to change the rules here. I want more here. And marriages are adaptable and they can move forward and they can grow and ours did, but it was because I was like, I need to feel things and have you be present as I feel them and not be afraid. And I can't be afraid of my feelings either. That was really important too. I can't come in all like, oh, I'm scared. Look at me. Like I got to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just feeling a feeling. So yeah, I learned where to build and not to build. I really like now as I meet new people, I pay attention because I will know, which direction to go forward. And in the ones that was really important, I found them all flexible enough. They had they'd been in a relationship with me of a different sort. And then when I showed up a different way, they were like, oh, okay.
I love the evolution of that. And not everyone has that ability or desire or whatever. I mean, I wasn't asking the question from a place of like, forget them, they're horrible
Yeah, yeah.
people. That wasn't where it was coming from. But I'm just curious because I find so often on our journeys when we do make big changes like that, or we decide we need something different, or not even decide, we learn we need something different, and then we share it externally. A, that's super vulnerable. B, not everyone can receive it, but that's not about you. I mean, it doesn't, and so, but it can be such a slippery slope and such a tricky thing to navigate. So I love the way you answered that question. It was so honest and open about, and there's so much wisdom in the being able to discern and decide. I do think as we grow and evolve and recognize more what we need and how we want to show up in our relationships, I do think wisdom is gained as you do that. And skills are built as you do that. Otherwise, no change happens. And so there is a part of it where it's like you hold space in a different way, you communicate in a different way, you um, allow and offer reciprocity in a different way. And so, but it takes courage. I think the two, I mean, it all takes courage, let's be honest. But I think the biggest like sides of that courage coin in this is like the ones who are going to or need to fall off to have whatever that looks like happen. For that to happen takes just immense amounts of courage. I'm not trying to make it scary. I'm just saying, like, you got to be able to show up, but then also to stay, to decide. It's like you and your husband, because you said you've been together for decades, right?
Like
And like,
31 years. Yeah.
yeah, and so like to decide that it's worth it and the effort is going to be there, and then to show up, not only from your wise self and a space holder for yourself, but then also on some level, you're the one making the change. You also have to be able to hold space for the other person who's going to attempt to meet you
Good
where you're at.
point. Good point. Yeah.
That's hard to do when you're in it, when you're in the thick of like all these changes and shifts. I just think, I mean, I don't know. It just feels like that was a really beautiful, like, explanation and breakdown of kind of what that might look and feel like. And I don't know, I'm hoping it helps a listener somewhere.
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying is really critical because it does take courage and a hard thing to swallow is when I have a client who wants an emotionally intimate relationship with their spouse and goes to that spouse and says, I want to change the rules here. I want more. I want you to know me more deeply, and I want to know you more deeply. And the spouse says, mm-mm, like, I don't want that. That's too scary for me, or I'm not interested, or whatever. That is a hard thing to face and requires a couple of different possible options. Like it could be a deal breaker. And I've seen that happen. And then the person go on to find the person who can do that. And that's beautiful. But it's always difficult for a marriage to end, no matter what the reason. And then other times they're like, no, I want to be in this, but I'm going to have to build that somewhere else. You can't,
Mm.
when you crave emotional intimacy and you become aware of that, like you got to find places for it because we need to be seen. Like my big mission is to eradicate loneliness, and loneliness is not being seen in the world. And you have to find places where you're seen. And if that's not going to be with your spouse, that's something you're going to have to build with your friends or your siblings or whatever.
Yeah. I love that you offered that opportunity as well, right? Because I think sometimes we hear the word intimacy and we think, oh no, it can only be our our one exclusive intimate partner. But intimacy can look a lot of different ways and so vulnerable to find that piece of yourself, I guess. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do it. That is not what this is at all. But like,
Totally.
I had that uncovering of just like, you know, I think I'm getting to know myself on a deeper level. And, but that requires, I can't do it by myself, right? I mean, like, I can do parts of it by myself. But for me to get really vulnerable and really get to know that place of myself, I almost have to see like how this works with another human.
Oh,
There's,
yeah. Some things are not, some things will never reveal themselves to you unless you're in a relationship. And some things cannot heal without a relationship. Like it's required if we want to kind of get to all the corners in this
yeah.
lifetime, you know?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for answering that question. I mean, it was a question that was none of my business, but it also felt really important to kind of unpack of like, what might this look like when you change the rules to literally everybody in your life on some level, because
Totally,
you're showing
totally.
up completely differently. And then what does that look like?
Yeah. And you're right. It takes courage. You have to really be, I mean, I think you said this a little while ago. You have to be able to be vulnerable with yourself. You
Yeah.
have to be able to hold yourself in an emotionally safe place because you can be standing in front of someone and asking for more and them say no. And onboarding that without it being a rejection, but it being about what their wants and needs are and not about any reflection of you is hard to do, but really critical because we have to keep taking those risks to find out where to build. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a good observation too about just, I think the internal landscape and knowing our internal landscape is such an important piece because it's like I might know I'm ready and I want to dance, but I might not be ready to dance with everyone yet. Like
Yeah.
because it's hard when you're very first kind of opening up and kind of cracking that shell open. It can feel vulnerable, but then also in that kind of there's an in between that happens where then almost everything feels personal and maybe like an attack, even though even though like because you just haven't found your legs yet, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah,
No,
that's
it's totally,
amazing.
it's like my husband's a gardener and you have the seeds and you hold them inside in the little pods and you like carefully water them and you protect them before you go put them in the big garden and like in that in between place we are so tender and vulnerable and like we need to especially protect ourselves then before we're willing to like step forward boldly and say like this is what I want.
Yeah. And I
Totally.
think that just what you just said there is a really great like point. Like when I say it takes courage, it doesn't mean it has to happen instantaneously, right? Like it's like we have to build that courage, we have to build that wisdom, we have to build the awareness and all the different pieces that come together before I say have to, whatever we get
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
But I think it's such a I think sometimes impatience gets in the way.
totally.
It's like we start in that place of like I have needs, not hope, you know, and then we move into
Mhm.
this place of I don't know, just like a well, now that I know it, I want it now.
I think so too. And you know what? I mean, I know that so many things come back to this, but I do think that because we are exposed to so much more information and people and images of that are great because they're what we want, like a vision board, but it also can make us really feel like we're not there yet. And we just forget that was a lot of steps for that person to get there. And as long as we keep taking them, we're going to get where we want to go too. But yeah, it's not like right now.
So a weird question just popped into my head. I'm curious about like you thrive on goals and like meeting them is how it feels, right? Like you like your business to be a success. You like to show up in a certain way and you like to be mindful and intentional. This is what I'm hearing, my perspective, right? But so I'm wondering, was there ever a point where like how your relationship with your goals changed so that they were a little more, I don't know if it's like maybe it's forgiving. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
It's really comes down to how I think I am less I'm probably less disciplined now because I used discipline as like solution a solution and me being the problem. It's like I also figured out that I had been doing I mean I've been personal development and self-help for years and it wasn't until I had gone through this healing process that I realized I was just a problem that I was trying to solve, right? These were all like
Oh,
solutions to the problem of me instead of, no, I'm fine. I can like collect new tools and new practices and stuff, but not as a response to the I'm broken, you know? And so that's a shift, you know, in how I approach goals, right? So, and there's, dude, I am working on some of it still. Like I've got to,
sure.
I think I may be working forever to repair my self-image, like my physical self-image. That's like that one runs deep. And that's something that I work on all the time. And that's where I can really feel the, you know, the ego pull and the goal for the sake of fixing a problem that I am. So by all means, I don't have it perfect, but that's the change kind of is that I don't quite have that desperate, I have to get there in order to be okay.
Mm, yeah, that's a journey in of itself, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just
totally.
like it's such a great one to be on. I mean, albeit painful sometimes, but to actually, I feel like my life just completely changed when I decided to put my foot on that path. Like I'm on the journey. And that's such a cliche thing to say, but I mean, I literally mean like I'm me learning how to embrace all of me, even the bits and pieces that I really struggle with,
Totally.
and I think there's something to be said for, I don't know, just like taking the steps, circling it all the way back to where we started of it's literally one small step at a time. But then they compound, they build on each other, and next thing you know, you look back and you're like, I didn't think I was doing that much, but gosh, if I that's like I'm leaps and bounds ahead of where I would have thought I would have even been able to go, let alone. So I just love I don't know. I guess I'm not sure how this is translating to the listeners, but to me, this feels like there's simplicity here. I mean,
Yeah,
I get that it's a big, huge, complex thing, but there is simplicity in, find your people on even just like to really simplify it and make yourself one of them. Like be
totally.
part of that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's
you're right
amazing.
there. Like just get back and connected. Like one of the reasons I started with the intention that I did is because I can want this to be good and I can want to win at this and I can want all those things, but then I'm gonna have a lesser experience because I chose I chose to step into like my egoic nature to do this, and then I don't get to have the same connection, and we don't create something as magical. So I think it is a constant. You're constantly. I always think it like this. I'm on a path and I get to a fork, and that's the ego road, or I stay on this one. And sometimes I'm going to take those paths and then I back up and get back on mine. And I constantly am faced with the option to go that way. And my goal and my journey, my work is to continue to try to stay on this one and just keep taking little steps forward. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love it. I feel like we're in a good place to wrap up, but I also feel like there may be another little something that you want to share, or just if you want to take a minute or a moment and reflect on. I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground
Yeah.
today.
A lot of territory. That's my
Yeah.
favorite. I like love meandering around into different spaces in a conversation. Totally.
Yeah.
No, this is a great time to wrap. I think we did cover a lot of ground and I hope that whoever's listening does feel hopeful and like baby steps will get you where you're going to go. And that
Right.
all, you know, relationships are really critical. I think they're the most, starting with ourselves, the most important thing we have, and I encourage everyone to lean into it and the emotional safety being the first step with yourself and then creating emotional safety in your relationships so that you can be vulnerable because like there's magic in there in
Mm.
those exposing your vulnerable parts to someone else is like I don't know, there's no greater feeling than having someone see you that way. So
I think I just felt like half of the listeners go, "Oh, what do you mean vulnerable?" And then the other half going, "No, she's right. It's true." Half is strong word, but I felt like a pocket of like, "Oh my God, vulnerable. No, never. That is not safe. Never has been, never will be." And then another sort of side of things going, "Yeah, I didn't used to believe it, but dang, if it's not been proven." over and over again. And not even to say that every time we choose to be vulnerable is easy.
No, and I think
You
it should be
know,
calculated in a sense that, if you have emotional safety, like say with another person, where what's the oath the doctors take that's like do no harm, right?
oh
If
yeah.
you know you can stand in front of someone and they may not apologize, they may not validate you, they may not step toward you, but as long as they don't attack you, threaten you, abandon you, ignore you. Like if you can start to establish that level of emotional safety in your relationships where you're taking a little risk, but you're still safe, it's a calculated risk, then you can start building. And so that's really, if anybody out there did hear the word vulnerable and that sounded scary, it is scary. And there
Yeah.
are ways to kind of bring down the risks of it, but that's committing. First, you commit to doing that to yourself. Like, I'm not going to attack myself, abandon myself, ignore myself. I'm going to stay there for myself. But then I think it's fair to ask in our closest relationships to hold the other person accountable and ourselves to emotional safety so that we can do that vulnerability. And it's like a little less scary.
Yeah. So, do you have an easy way for people to find you? I will put it in the show notes as well. So, like, I want to include your book link and,
Yeah.
anything else you want me to include. But do you have a
You can
website?
find me anywhere under my name, Stacy Rocklein, my website at Amazon, at Instagram, Substack. I'm really the most active on YouTube, so
Okay.
you can find me there that way. So, but it's easy to find me anywhere.
Awesome. And your last name is spelled
Yes, it's
Rockl.
Rockline, like, standing in a line, but it's spelled Lein.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was clear because people be Googling and not
Yeah,
having the spelling right.
yeah, totally. Nobody gets it right. Don't worry.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. This was so much fun.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful.